Are you someone who constantly suspects your partner even though you don't really have any substantial proof? Do you find yourself making accusations only to regret them later? If so, this video is for you. Today we will explore one possible psychological reason why this pattern occurs: projection. I am Dr. Das and welcome to my channel Vedic AstroPsychology, where I use Vedic astrology along with psychology and behavioral sciences to understand human behavior and human tendencies, and in turn try to optimize them in a conscious and proactive manner. So when it comes to being convinced that your partner is cheating and accusing them of that, there could be many reasons for that. It's not one reason only. In my previous video, which I link over here, I explored the idea of fear of abandonment, where a person feels scared of being left alone and they constantly seek reassurance, and in the process they might escalate their fear and accuse their partner of cheating or of being unfaithful. That is one psychological pathway to this tendency. There are many others too. So in this video, what I'll be looking at is the idea of projection. So it is the same behavior, but the underlying psychology beneath that is completely different. And because of that, the underlying astrological manifestations that we look for in a birth chart also becomes different. So to start, let's begin with the idea of what is projection. The definition is that projection is an unconscious process, something that happens below the realm of your understanding and awareness, and it is automatic. It happens automatically, where the person attributes their unacceptable thoughts, feelings, and motives or impulses onto someone else. So in a way, it's a psychological defense mechanism where instead of understanding your own thoughts, which you don't like or which you do not accept, or your fears or your desires or your insecurities, what you tend to do that is to protect your ego and to protect your self-image. You project that to someone else, that it is not me who is thinking that, it must be you. And such a person genuinely believes that the suspicion is real. They are not usually lying or trying to manipulate. Their interpretation of the world, of their own experience, is such that they believe that the other person must be having these own thoughts. Because where are these thoughts coming from? And they don't connect that to their own thinking, that that thought was actually just in their head and there is no basis of any reality to that. So the process is that first what happens is that an uncomfortable thought or fear or impulse arises. Then this person's mind struggles to accept it as their own. So they don't believe that it is theirs, and in turn they unconsciously assign that thought to someone else, their partner, and then they become convinced that the other person is the source of the problem, because the thought itself was so unholy or so unconventional or something that was not aligned to their self-image. So anyone else thinking the same thought would not align to their self-image, and and they would look down at such a person and hence accuse such a person. So it needs to, what I would like to clear is that it's not that the person who is has cheating impulses. It's not that there is someone who wants to cheat and then that thought is taboo for them, so they attribute it to their partner that you must be the one thinking of cheating. This is one manifestation of projection, but it is not the only reason. Sometimes what happens is a person might be tempted to cheat. Yeah, they don't have the tendency, but they might have thought that, oh, this other person from this opposite gender looks very good, or not opposite gender, but whoever they're attracted to, whichever gender, they look very good. So if I can have that thought and if I can be tempted to think that, then why can't my significant other also be tempted to think that? They trust their own distrust. They find, like, maybe they find it hard to be faithful. They're like it requires a lot of energy and effort from them. Hence, it must require a lot of energy and effort from the significant others. They might be insecure. They might be, jealous of for different reasons. So the same, the same. That's what they project. Or they might feel, they might fear betrayal, which we kind of discussed in that previous video. That fear of abandonment or betrayal, and that's what they project. Maybe they are not as committed in the relation as they believe to be, right? So their self-image is that they're totally committed in this relation, they're very happy in this relation, and to think otherwise, that they are not happy in this relation, becomes taboo for them, that they do not want to entertain that thought. So what they will do is they will project that the significant other is the one who is not happy in the relation. And then, because of these tendencies to project and this unconscious loop that kicks in into their head whenever whenever it gets activated, they will jump to conclusions. Such people, they will assume that the other person is going to cheat rather than verify. And within this, uh, many different psychological processes come about, like confirmation bias. If the person commented that they saw someone who was wearing a good dress, or they looked very good, so that would in their mind confirm that this person is cheating. Or if they were being extra friendly with someone else, in their mind, rather than verify, they will just assume that this is a 100% sign that their partner is going to cheat. So they see hidden motives without any real evidence, substantial evidence. The other thing, other characteristic of such people who, is that they distrust ambiguity. They will interpret neutral behavior as suspicious. As I mentioned, if someone is smiling or being extra friendly, they will consider that to be suspicious. And they will, as I mentioned, they will externalize their own inner world. They're attributing their own fears and temptations onto others and assume others will do the same. And and they believe that their partner is capable what they themselves are imagining in their head. So you have to see how disproportionate it is. It's not that they are cheating, they're just imagining it. Not even imagining cheating, it's just one very small subtle thought of betrayal, or a certain small thought that that they are upset with the relation. So that thought, they need to hide it immediately, and that they will magnify into the other person and attribute cheating or being unfaithful to the other person instead. So it's an overblown um, um, it's an overblown psychological response over here. So where does projection come from, and who is likely person to have it, to have these kind of tendencies? So it develops, as I mentioned, as an unconscious defense mechanism. The mind protects itself from thoughts or emotions that threaten their own self-image, and because of that, instead of recognizing their own feelings and their thoughts and exploring why they're having those thoughts, they just close that that window of exploration, and rather than thinking it through, they shut it down, and then that thought, that energy has to go somewhere. So that becomes what gets projected. So the kind of people who who do this are who tend to have unacknowledged insecurities, who suppress desire or temptations, maybe who have grown up in environments where thinking freely is not allowed, or is not entertained, is not supported. Thinking freely in itself requires a lot of training and practice, and it takes some time and to do it correctly. And they might have some unresolved guilt or shame, which makes them want to protect the self image even more. Something totally unrelated, right? So maybe some incident somewhere where they felt guilt or they felt shame, and that created a resolve amongst them uh, to protect their self-image, to be this sort of holy than thou, or the sort of clean image that they have made up in their head. So now they have to protect that, and because of that, they stop entertaining thoughts, and because of that, projection starts happening. maybe they even had some past experience with betrayal, and maybe they were with some partner who betrayed them, or not even partner, it could be some, they just felt betrayed in some experiences in their life, and making their mind expect similar outcomes, with their partner. And lastly, they have poor self-awareness, which ties to the idea that they don't think through their own thoughts completely. So making it difficult to distinguish between what is an internal feeling, what is external reality. So it gets all very convoluted, and they don't really have this self-awareness of why they what thoughts they've had, how to process those thoughts and things like that, and they end up doing a lot of projection. So the bottom line here is that projection isn't about seeing reality as it is. It is about seeing reality through the lens of what's happening inside their head, and at an unconscious level, that too. And then what happens is, over time, the trust gradually erodes. Their partners feel constantly questioned rather than trusted, and the relation becomes emotionally exhausting. So every interaction feels like it requires a defense. The partner goes out, comes him late, and that requires an explanation. And then arguments become very repetitive. The same accusations surface despite repeated reassurance, and they'll resurface from different perspectives. One time it's you came in late, the other time the same argument you will be had because you smiled at someone, and the third time because you complimented someone else, etc., etc. So there could be infinite number of reasons, but the argument will be the same, and it will be along these lines that of unfaithfulness and things like that. And and then the effect of reassurance gets lost. So the partner will keep trying to reassure you, give proof, and but then that provides only temporary relief. The next time this unconscious loop kicks in, again the same argument will be had, and then the partner will emotionally withdraw. They will feel they'll stop feeling safe or understood in this relation, and maybe what could happen is that the projection actually gets reinforced. The withdrawal is interpreted as proof that something is wrong, and then this creates this sort of self-fulfilling cycle, which and where the fear creates distance, and the distance confirms that even the partner will have their own emotional needs, which they will go and maybe to satisfy from somewhere else, or they just feel unfulfilled in this relation, and eventually the relation breaks down. And ironically, it is not because of the infidelity or because of actual cheating. It's just because instead of trusting the partner, you are like being suspicious of the partner. So this is a serious psychological trap, right? The more they project, the more convinced they become they're seeing the truth, and they make self-reflection increasingly difficult, because they would have gathered 10, 15 random proofs which are totally random and don't have any bearing to reality over a couple of years, months, or whatever, and they will stop. They'll be convinced it's not something happening inside me; it's the partner who is doing that. So that is the psychological part of why some people are convinced that their partner is cheating, or why they accuse them of being unfaithful. What about the astrological dimensions to this, the manifestations to this? So this is something which I have seen in few charts where this manifests based on some combinations. Again, these are astrological tendencies. These are not fixed rules, so I just want to make them clear, and it becomes very complicated. It's not like a single planet or a single combination or house will make a person accusatory and things like that. You must look at the entire birth chart, and you need to look at the strengths of the planets, the aspects. You need to look at the mahadashas, the transits, the antardashas. Maybe some planetary combinations activate, which makes a person suspicious. So you have to look at all of that holistically. Having said that, most likely what must be happening is a sort of connection between Moon and Rahu. So Moon is your emotional feelings and what you think, and Rahu is a sort of not necessarily corruption of those feelings, but a sort of it brings in this anxiety, this suspicious energy into, that maybe something else must be there which I need to find out. This obsession, this desire to find out something which is illusionary. So that is Rahu. So when you combine the two, it might make the person you know suspect their partner, and then hence, and that leads to accusations and things like that. Another combination could be Mercury and Rahu, right? So Mercury is analysis, is thinking, your thought process, and if you mix in Rahu from a negative point of view, if it's not a good connection with Rahu, then it becomes the analysis becomes distorted. The cognition becomes distorted, and you start building narratives with incomplete information, right? And then, of course, there could be some eighth house elements, because eighth house is research, hidden motives, and psychological depth. And if it is afflicted and it's not in a good position, then this research and hidden motives become negative, and you start finding motives where they don't exist. You're trying to prove something which does not exist, and you're convinced that it exists. So that's like a sign of a bad researcher, right? So again, a negative aspect of eighth house becomes manifest. Maybe some affliction to the seventh house or the seventh lord, right? Because that brings in relationship insecurity. So these are some, but these are extremely generic and may not even necessarily be in the chart of someone who has actually done this, who has accused someone where nothing exists. And the reason for that is because, as I mentioned, the chart has to be looked at holistically. Maybe Venus is the seventh lord and it is with the eighth house, and it has got some aspect of Rahu, or so now instead of Moon and Rahu, you have Venus, which is seventh lord, and in the eighth house, and eighth house is weak for some other reason, and the same thing could manifest. So it really depends on your personal chart, and but this is the way how you will probably derive, or this is the way how you will derive the whether this tendency exists in your partner or in yourself. So now we can explore how to solve it. Yeah, once we have seen that this exists from a psychology point of view and it manifests in the charts of people too, how can we address it? So the first step is to understand and build your self-awareness. That becomes the most important thing over here. So the idea here is that you have to recognize your suspicions, maybe coming from inside, and you need to completely really um, understand why these thoughts are coming, from where they're coming. You have, and it will be so disconnected if you really go into like deep meditation or try to understand why you feel agitated or why you're feeling this sense of um, you know suspicion, and then you see that maybe are you projecting it, uh, and try to figure out where you're projecting it from. That is building self-awareness, and for that you need to master your mind, right? And if you want to master your mind and understand your thoughts completely, you need to strengthen your moon. So again, through mindfulness, meditation, emotional awareness, maybe journaling, writing down, things like that, right? Then you have to learn how to strengthen your Mercury, because this sort of analysis requires a very strong Mercury to be this awareness and exercising your ability to think where this thought is germinated from. That requires you to strengthen your Mercury and understand and do a lot of analysis, right? And when you write down, what you're writing is actually your thought process, and you're trying to figure out where things come out. So that's all Mercurian energy. So you want to understand what are the facts, you want to understand what are the assumptions you're making, and you want to look for counterfactual um, explanations. What other explanation could be there for this person, for my significant other or partner to behave that other way? So if they smiled at someone or they complimented someone, do they also compliment other random people from the opposite gender or their own gender, whatever the thing is? So you need to look at the data from a scientific and a research point of view, and that requires to strengthen your Mercury. So you need to be able to cultivate objective thinking, reflection, and pick up on this idea of doing, maybe like a research in a more systematic manner. So approach your suspicion from a research point of view, from a scientific point of view. After that, what you could work on is to heal your own underlying wound. So as I mentioned, maybe this fear of this betrayal, or this fear of these kind of thoughts, they come from some childhood experiences where you were denied something, where you were made to feel guilt, or where you were made to feel shame, or maybe you had some past betrayal. So you need to work through that. You need to be able to understand where this is always coming from, and if you explore that pattern, that really opens up so much for you. Once you unlock that, it's a very powerful experience to kind of go back into your past, spend time over there, and figure out where exactly this came about. It requires maybe some therapy, or maybe talking to friends, or someone who you can really talk about your experience in an objective manner. And once you do that and you unlock where the source of this sort of frustration, and the source of where this wound is in your past, and you fix that, then so it's like feels amazing. So here, from an astrological point of view, what happens is, maybe there was some particular mahadasha or antardasha, or some transits which tend to activate these latent tendencies. Right, so that is also, from an astrological point of view, that is also something we look at, where we try to see whether these tendencies come about when certain combinations in your chart activate, through, as I mentioned, mahadashas or the transits or things like that. So that is also some exploration that we can do, and maybe that will give us a hint from where in the past your trauma lies, or the wound lies. So if the tendencies come about because of, say, Jupiter, so maybe something related to education, or in your school, or the teacher said something, things like that. So we that's how we'll try to connect them, if you try to do it from a proper psychology and astrology point of view. And then finally, what you should do is, you should replace your accusation with curiosity. This again connects to the idea of doing research, right? So research is all about curiosity. You need to be really curious, and think that instead of accusing the person, you're hiding something. You should be, like, ask them, like, can you help me understand this? And invite the conversation, because that's what curiosity does. It invites conversation. Accusation invites defensiveness, and you put the partner on a back foot, and then they're trying to protect their self-image and their relation, etc. So these are some strategies which you can go about. Another one is that you can try to accept uncertainty, right? So this is all about taming the Rahu energy. So Rahu hates uncertainty, and it's looking for certainty. Yeah, if you look at Rahu's story, that's what it is. That they he and in order to get certainty, or its own desires, it becomes extremely compulsive. It becomes obsessive, and it defaults to negative dimensions of the energy, and so if you want to tame that, then again you have to go and you have to strengthen your Ketu, for example, because it's diagonally opposite, and you do that through self development and letting go, and it comes back to meditation and mindfulness, etc. So that's how you tame Rahu, and you accept uncertainty and you live with that. And once you do that, then you become less fearful, and then you're able to process all these other things well. You're able to communicate better. You're able to, instead of accusing, you become curious, etc. So that's some energy that you have to learn to tame, the Rahu energy. So basically the idea is to reflect inwards, and when you reflect inwards and you start seeing that the world around you is your own manifestation, projection fails to dissolve, right? Because if you're responsible for what's around you, then you fix yourself, and then what around you becomes better too. So that meditation, etc., help with this, turning the lens inwards. So this is my thoughts about why some people are convinced that their partner is cheating, and why they make accusations. And as I mentioned before, there are many reasons, but in particular we explored projection over here, and we saw how projection has its own psychological underpinnings and characteristics, and how it evolves, and how that connects to um, your birth chart, and the astrological uh, timing and mahadashas and things like that. So yeah, so yeah, and just to clarify again, so these combinations discussed, which I discussed, are potential psychological patterns and tendencies. They exist in the chart, but they are not certainties, and it's not a diagnostic, right? So don't, like if you are a person who becomes, who gets convinced that the partner is cheating, you can't take this as a sign that, oh, so you have to, exercise what I talked about letting go and thinking it through, etc. So a lot depends on your chart. Like these 5 6 combinations I mentioned, there could be more too, as I yeah. So if you would like to understand how to apply this in your own chart, then a more personalized chart reading is needed. And because every horoscope is unique, every person is unique, so the tendencies also tend to be unique. And if you want to arrest these unconscious processes, you need to work through this in a more customized and a more structured manner. So that's it from my side. If you liked this video, please let me know, and do share your comments and your thoughts. And I look forward to making more such videos. So stay tuned and subscribe, etc. Thank you.